lost his son, and it occurred to me that, you know, when someone's lost a child and they talk to someone else maybe who's lost a child, and they've got, I guess, much more compassion about something like that. And so I was talking to people from my small group after church about how I had lost, had several miscarriages, you know, during different pregnancies of mine, and so that was, you know, hard enough to go through. And that during one of my miscarriages was twins, and it was my son and the other baby. They were fraternal twins, and at some point, about 4 months in, 4.5 months in, that I lost one of the twins. It became unattached, and basically there was no heartbeat, and so it, you know, it died inside me. Well, my son was about 2.5 years old, and he started asking me about what happened to my brother, and I was like, your brother? I was kind of confused, and he says, and then he basically, I kind of tried to see what he meant by that, and he said, well, Mommy, he says, when I was in your tummy, he said, there was another baby inside with me, he says, and it was my brother, and he says, and we could see each other, and we could talk to each other, and I guess, I don't know if he meant like talk like the way we obviously talk in, you know, the English language, but they had some form of communication. And he said that they could put their little hands and hold up their hands toward each other, and he said that they could see each other like either smiling or laughing or something like that, and it totally floored me. I mean, I was kind of like, oh, okay, and nobody had ever mentioned to my brother, you know, to my son, about the baby that we'd lost. I mean, it was basically, it happened. Once we had the actual healthy baby boy that came into our life, we didn't really think to explain to him at, you know, age, you know, 18 months or 2 years old and things like that, that, oh, this had happened, there was 2 of you, and then we lost one, you know. I said he wasn't ready to handle something like that, so nobody had ever brought it up to him. So him telling me all this about this baby that was his brother, that he could see and that he could have some kind of communication with, like, absolutely, like, pushed me over with a feather as far as, like, you know, oh my gosh, it's like, how does this, you know, how does this kid actually really remember being in the womb, and this is something that happened when he was only, you know, 4.5 months into the pregnancy, you know, that they could actually somehow have this little communication of this other little being, you know, being in there. And I said, so that was basically, you know, it told him that, like, you know, well, something was wrong with that baby, and that God had to take it, you know, back to heaven to fix it. And so that was the best we could explain to a 2.5-year-old as to what happened to his brother, was that, okay, well, the baby, there was something wrong with it, and, you know, God took it back to heaven to, like, make it better. And he was fine with that, and he just, you know, went about his little Henry business, you know. And after that, it was like, there was about a 5-year gap in between him and my daughter. And when she was in my tummy, my great little son that's 5 years old comes walking up to me one day and says, Mommy, he says, I know who this baby is in your tummy. And I was like, well, okay, who's the baby in my tummy? And he says, the baby that was in my tummy with me, the one that was broken. He says, God fixed it and gave it back to us, and now it's all better. And I was just like, to me, and it was like, I you know, I'm not a big boo-hooer, but I totally, like, you know, kind of, you know, got me, like, emotional. Is that, like, here's out of the mouths of babes is my son telling me that, you know, that God took it back to heaven, fixed it, made it all better, and then gave it back to us, you know. So that was, you know, that was the story about, you know, how Henry and Cheyenne and whatnot, you know, came about. I'd had, like I said before, I'd even gotten married. I'd had a pregnancy with my, now that we talked about this was prior to this, so going back about 4 years prior to me having Henry, my husband and I were together, and I had taken a rubella shot because I'd come in contact that I was not immune to it, so they gave me a rubella shot, and we accidentally got pregnant when we were told to be very cautious and not get pregnant. And so I went to my doctor saying, okay, I had this rubella shot, and about a month later, my husband and I got pregnant. And my doctor basically looked and sat me down and said, I can't tell you what to do. He said, but, and I don't know what your religious beliefs are, he said, but if you were my daughter, he said, I would highly, strongly advise you to have the pregnancy terminated. And I just was like, I mean, at that point I was a complete, you know, basket case, and I just was like, I don't think I can do that. I mean, I was raised, you know, in the Catholic faith originally, but I just was like, I just, and he said, well, he says, the chance of this baby being healthy, just having nothing wrong with it, is maybe 15%. He said the chance of this baby being severely, and he goes, and I can't stress enough that it will be severely handicapped, blind, deaf, missing limbs, might never ever, speak, and I just was like, this is kind of overwhelming. I think at the time I was 23 and a half years old, and I just was like, I didn't even want to hear what he was saying. I just was like, you can't seriously be telling me that this baby is going to have all these problems. I mean, it's strange enough when you're not trying to get pregnant, you get pregnant, okay, that's like, oopsie, but now you're telling me that I have to terminate this pregnancy. And the part of me wanted to stick with my faith that, like, I will just keep praying and I'll be strong and God will give me that 15%, whatever the little, even if it was 99.1%, I'll stick with it and I'll have this baby. And he said, well, go see another doctor, pick a different doctor, go see what he says, or he or she says. And so I did that. About a week later I went to a different doctor, and basically almost as if they compared notes. It was, no, he says, you will have severe handicapped child, it will have multiple issues. And I just was like, again, I didn't want to hear it, but I went crying home to my, soon-to-be husband and said, the second doctor said the same thing. He said, you've got to terminate the pregnancy, you've got no hope in, having a really a decent outcome of this. And so my husband and I actually, went to abortion clinic. I was pretty much kicking and like I thought I could do it, and then I would not do it. And then I'd get there, and I got there, and I wanted to literally run out the door of the place. And Bill was kind of like, no, honey, you got to do this. The doctors, you heard what they said. We weren't ready for even a baby, but we were certainly not ready for a baby that's going to have multiple, special needs and medical needs and whatnot. And I just was like, okay. So he kind of like really just kind of put the pedal down to it, saying that you got to just be tough and go through it. And I went in there, and I was the only person in the place at that time. So I walked in there, and they took me down to the room to do it, and they asked me if I wanted anesthesia. I said no, because I think I felt so horrible for doing it that I literally remember telling the nurse that I want to feel every horrible moment of it. It's like almost like I was trying to punish myself for doing this, and so I had no anesthesia. And then I guess normally the girl that would go there would have anesthesia, so they'd be still in that kind of twilighty kind of stage. Well, afterwards I was just in terrible, horrendous pain, and the nurse was outside a little teeny curtain that was just a little curtain around the little room I was in, and she's talking to one of the other nurses, and she says, well, we could tell from the, I don't know if she said fetal matter or whatever it was, if it was embryonic matter or something, but she said, well, we could tell from the, the stuff that we got out of her that it was twins. So I was like, oh great, so like here I am, the person that, didn't think I could even do it at all, and now I found out that I had just killed 2 babies, so I was then pretty much the guilt of that is never. I mean, I'm 53 and that was 30, so that's 20 years ago. Am I doing my math right there? No, excuse me, 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, and I'm still feeling the guilt and pain and sorrow and shame of having done that. Even if it was medically deemed, the right medical thing to do, I just felt like horrendous for ever having done it. And what touched me so much about our pastor talking about, because he's lost a child, that he has more compassion, and people understand that when he's talking to people that have lost a child, he has more, I guess, bonding with them over that. And so I remember thinking that after this had all happened to me, that there have been girls in my life that I knew that were 16 or 18 or 19-year-old girls that were pregnant, that had an unplanned, unwanted pregnancy. And I talked to them, and I told them, I said I might have been 30 at the time, and they were 19, and they were friends of people that we knew and things like that, their daughters. And I basically told them that, you might think this is an easy choice to make because you're 17 or 19 and you just don't want a baby right now. I said, but, trust me, I said, this moment will haunt you, and it will never really let go of you. I said, for your whole life. I mean, it will something that follows you. I said, and you might think you could just like, oh yeah, whatever, like you knew a friend that had one already, and it was a piece of cake, they went in, they did this, she didn't feel that much pain, afterwards, and she went on with her life, and her life is fine. I'm like, if you have any conscience whatsoever, if you have any faith and belief in God, I said, it is something that definitely will traumatize you, and it will definitely stay with you, And so I told him, I said, there's a lot of people out there that want children that can't have them. I said, so, I can understand perhaps if a 16-year-old girl's been raped and she gets pregnant from that rape. I said, then perhaps, yeah, I wouldn't be recommending that girl maybe carry that pregnancy to full term. I said, but for any other reason, if they're healthy enough, 16 or 18 or 19-year-old girl, and they just got pregnant by their boyfriend because they were, being, promiscuous or whatever, I said, then carry the pregnancy to term and then let somebody else have a baby from it. Let something good come out of your, mistake, But anyways, that's what we were talking about after church today. And so now I just had to tell my daughter this whole story because I've never actually talked to my 19, almost 20-year-old daughter about this. So I basically, told her, and she and I just had she was having a little moment with me about it and said that she understood and she was okay with what, she was okay with, what happened, even though it's already done. She was just like, I understand that that would, because she knows she knows me better than anybody and knows how things like that I would take to heart so much. And so she was surprised that I had never told her all these years. She's like, I know how much you share things with me and you want me to know stories about something like this. So she was kind of more like, wow, it must have really been hard for you, Mom, if you were too embarrassed or too upset to even tell me about it. And I said, well, it's something that I'd raised you to be the kind of girl that would maybe hopefully not get yourself ever in a situation where you were pregnant, and thinking about terminating a pregnancy. I said, so, but to me it was just like it happened with your dad, I said, and it was, just the circumstance of, no one, because nobody, I wasn't being promiscuous, I wasn't being, really what I would think is, a girl that was out there just running around with men or something like that. I said, it was just the man that I, was going to marry and did, and we've been together 30 years, but anyway, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you, Lee.